Hello class, and welcome back to another lesson in pottery. Today, we're finally going to get to working on the wheel and making a bowl. I hope that you're as excited as I am to see what we'll create today. But first, let's do a refresher on some basic terms, tools, and materials that we'll need to know today. First, let's talk about clay. Clay is an earthy material that permanently hardens after being fired in a kiln. There are several types of clay: earthen clay, porcelain, and stoneware, which we'll be using today. More specifically, I will be working with speckled buff clay. Speckled buff is a mid to high fire clay that is great for functional pieces. Let's take a closer look. It's nice and wet and easy to use. This will be perfect to work with today. Let's get into some tools that we'll need to make our bowl today. First of all, our clay, which I already went over. Next, and most important, is our potter's wheel. We'll also need a bowl of water to help us with shaping the clay and keeping it malleable on the wheel. We'll also need a metal rib or a wood rib, it's up to you, but this will help us in the shaping process as well. A sponge is also very important, as we'll use it later on to bring the clay up and use pressure on the other side. And a wire tool to later cut our piece off of the wheel, and a needle tool. This will help us for checking depth. Another important step we need to take before getting to the wheel is wedging. Now, for that, we'll need a hard, stable surface, which I currently don't have, but this folder will make do. And we're going to take our clay, we're going to take our wire tool and cut a piece that we can make about the size of our two fists together. So the size of our clay should be about this big, depending on your hand size, just so you don't overwhelm yourself on the wheel. An essential step before throwing on the wheel is wedging, because it'll homogenize the clay and remove any air bubbles that could cause problems later on, as well as strengthening the clay body, which reduces the risk of warping. So to wedge properly, you want to begin with your clay on your surface. You want to press in with the heels of your hands right here into the clay, and then you bring it up and you push back into it. You want to sort of create a spiral. This is going to be helpful to remove any air bubbles in the clay later on. You want to continue to wedge in one direction, and partway through, you're going to cut your clay in half with a wire tool to check and see if there's any air bubbles.
I also wanted to take a second to note I didn't use the pink folder. It was proving very difficult to use.
There's no air bubbles in my clay, so we're going to keep wedging it to keep homogenizing it. We're going to get it back on here. Perfect. Keep wedging, and you'll start to see a nice spiral. I'll show you that in just 1 second. You can start to shape it into a cone as well, which is going to help you on the wheel later on. You see that nice spiral there? You want to keep that. It's going to be a good signifier that you wedged well. Now we're ready to start throwing. No, not literally throwing, but the word throwing comes from the Old English word thrawan, which means to twist or turn. It's kind of a verbal demonstration of what we're about to do. So before we even get to the wheel, we want to get in a good position. You want to be able to sit comfortably in front of your wheel, not leaning back or anything. I recommend a backless stool or chair. We're going to turn our wheel on. Make sure that if you are right-handed, you are putting it to forward, where it's going to be going counterclockwise. If you are left-handed, you want to keep it in reverse, which is going to make the wheel turn clockwise. So let's throw our clay on. Don't be upset if it's not centered immediately. We're going to work on that right now. So we're going to gently work with our wheel, going at a slow pace. Do not be a speed racer on this. You want to take your time.
I also wanted to note that my wheel only spins in one direction, but it still stands true for right and left-handed people, the direction.
So we want to make sure that we get a good seal of our clay to the wheel as well, or else it's going to start lifting up and causing problems later on. So you want to kind of work it down onto the wheel. We're going to speed it up just a little bit and work on evening it out and centering it. Now mine is pretty centered at this time, but I can feel it on my hand warping and moving. So what we're going to do So we're going to take our fists and we're going to squeeze upward the palms of our hands. Take it and squeeze it upward. By doing this, we're going to start to gradually bring it into a tall cone that we're going to move back down later on. This is called centering the clay. You want to have even pressure in both of your hands so that it's not unevenly being pressured. You can kind of see the bottom. It's a little funky down here. You can take your wood tool and you can gently just press into the wheel. It will make a scraping sound. But this excess clay, we don't really need it. It's just going to make it more difficult to see the center and center our clay. So we're going to take our arm. I recommend that you kind of dig it into your leg right here on my left side. You want to dig it in and stabilize yourself so that you can begin to press it centered. Pressing it centered, and you'll get messy. That's why I'm in a full body suit. This is a very, very messy activity. Don't be afraid to get dirty. You see? It's slowly becoming more centered. We're going to bring it up. We're going to bring it up. Feeling the lumps and warps in the clay. It's becoming smoother as we go. You can take your wood rib, press it into the base, get rid of any excess clay you don't need. You can just stick that on the side of your bowl right here, or if you have a slip cup, you can put it in there as well.
Slip is a liquid mixture of clay and water that you can use to decorate. It's basically a byproduct of throwing.
All right, so now we're ready to start bringing it down. We're going to gently press the top into our other hand and gently begin to bring it down in this way. You just want to use gentle pressure and keep it moist. My sponge disappeared in my water. Keep it moist. It makes it easier to work with, but if it gets too wet, it's going to make it difficult. So you want to keep it at just the right consistency, the Goldilocks zone. You're going to keep pushing it down and pushing it down. All right, so we can bring this down more. It's a little uneven in some places, but we can work on that using the pressure of our hands and the top of our fist. We can press and evenly move that down into a more even shape. Go back in with our wood tool, bring it down, get rid of that excess clay at the base. It's just going to make it more warped later on if we don't move it. Keep getting your clay moist, keep it moist on your wheel, and press down into this nice dome shape. The pressure of your hands should be pretty forceful on the clay, but not too much to the point where you're warping it. Sometimes if your hands are too dry as well, the clay will stick to your hands and warp it. So you want to try and keep your hands and the points of access, the points of connection to the clay moist. Now that you've got a dome shape, we're going to start working on opening our bowl up. So first, gently start to press in on the top where the center of the clay is. We're going to use this to start drilling down into our clay and then begin to open it up. Now, you can work on this to make sure that your center is as centered as possible. You want to open it up to where the circle is directly in the middle, as centered as possible. So you want to use a lot of water here because we're going to be going into clay that has not been as moist as the outside has. So we're going to gently begin to press into the clay using our fingertips. This is a good point to note that you should have your nails trimmed, or else this is going to be a very difficult process to work with. You want to start pressing in gently, gently making your way down, adding water as you go to make it easier. Stop. Okay. Turn your wheel off or put it in stop. This is a very important part to make sure that your foot / your base is not too thin. You want to stop about 1/4 inch from the bottom. We're going to take our needle tool, push it into the bottom, follow with our finger. You want about, you want about that much on the bottom. It keeps it nice and thick, not too thick, but to where you won't have issues with your fingers hitting the wheel and creating a hole in the bottom. You do not want to go any deeper than that. So now we're going to begin to bring the mouth of our bowl out. We're going to take our hands stacked on each other and gently begin to pull along the bottom, following it flatly and not using your arm strength, but your body strength to slowly, slowly, slowly pull out. You can go back in and drag. That's about how wide I'm going to keep mine because we can always move it out later, but you can use your sponge in your bowl to start to flatten it out just a little bit. Gently flatten out the bottom. You can see my walls are going to be a little teensy bit warped right now, but we're going to fix that in just a second. Alrighty, so now we're going to begin to bring our walls up. We're going to take our sponge in our hands and we're going to gently start at the bottom where your hands and sponge meet. Take the clay and pinch, gently, gently pinch it and bring it up. You want to have a lot of water in this to keep the inside wet, or I'm sorry, the outside wet with your sponge. You don't want any friction going on. You don't want any snagging or dragging. That's going to cause issues. You can just take this slip on the inside of your bowl and gently just begin to work your way up. This is going to help you create even walls. You don't want to have thin walls on the bottom. Let me make that very clear. Having thin walls on the bottom will only cause you issues later on with it toppling over if the top is thicker and heavier than the bottom. So really make sure that you're working on the evenness of your walls.
You might have noticed, but this is actually a different bowl. The other clip did not record, unfortunately, so I ended up making two bowls.
You're going to start to possibly bring it out. If you want a wider bowl, you can start dragging it from the bottom. Gently, gently move it out, a nice round shape. Now we're going to begin to work on the lip. This is a very important part because you don't want a thin lip. That's not going to be good for functionality or firing in the future because it'll cause breakage later on. You want a nice round lip. You can play around with your shape as well. You can make designs on it. You can make it however you'd like. Really get creative with this part. But I'm just using my thumb to gently, gently press down on the top. Right there. Flatten it out on the side a little bit. You can do all kinds of things with this. You can put a split in it. You can carve it up. I'm just checking to make sure it looks good. All right, so now that you're done with your bowl, ask yourself a couple questions. Am I missing anything? Do I want to add anything, take away? Because after this, it's going to sit and get dry. So if you wanted to, say, add a nice little spiral inside of your bowl, you can take your finger and press in the middle and gently begin to pull outward. And create a nice little spiral shape inside. You can get creative here. You can get a spiral shape, and you can even do stuff on the outside after the fact if you would like. Now it's time to take our bowl off the wheel. Let me get my needle tool and my hard surface that we're going to put it on. We'll keep it here for safekeeping. All right, so you're going to take your needle tool, get good tension on it. You don't want it to be loose. And you're going to begin to gently scrape the bottom. And normally I would say add a little water, but it looks like it's coming off pretty easily. So I'm just going to add a little to show you guys, but you want to kind of use the water to get under it and move it off, you see. All right, and now gently, gently, gently take it with the side of your pinky on your hand. You're going to gently grab it, move it off, and then place it here to dry. Now that you've conquered making a bowl, there's so much you can do to make it unique and functional for yourself. Our background, wedging, and throwing lessons are all crucial elements in future creation on the wheel. Thank you for listening and following along today in the lesson, Making a Bowl. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and have a wonderful weekend.